What's going on, everybody? Do you want to turn nightmare dungeons into your own personal bowling alley?
Big long hallway. Oh, I wish there were bowling.
Perhaps you want to be like Eddie in Stranger Things and be in the Upside Down, playing your guitar, fighting the Hellbats with lightning strikes all around you.
Chrissy, this is from you.
Now, this is a pulverized based build, and some people may be turned off because that's the meta build that everybody's using. But this is not your mom's typical recipe for a pulverized build. Let's get into it. So we're starting off the skill tree with Storm Strike. I'm using this one specifically because it's a storm skill, so Wind Shear could be a good one here too. I prefer Storm Strike. Pick at your own desire there. We're gonna make it so that it immobilizes enemies, and we're also gonna chain 2 additional targets just to get a little bit of that additional crowd control every once in a while. Moving down the board, our next ability, which is our primary damage dealer in this build, and really the key part to this build, like any other pulverized build, is Pulverize. We're amping that up to 12 out of 5 through gear. We'll get into that a little bit more. You know, as you're doing this, 5 out of 5 is fine, but you want to pump as many points as you can in here. We're also going to make it so that every 12 seconds while we're healthy, we overpower with Pulverize, and then enemies that are overpowered by Pulverize are stunned. So it's giving us a lot of that crowd control that you can see. We're also putting 3 points just into Predatory Instinct for damage against close enemies, which happens all the time in a melee build. Moving on, we're going to go down to our defensive abilities now, and we're going to put 5 out of 5 into Earth and Bulwark. And it's important because this is our only defensive skill in the build. It's also our only way to actively break crowd control through abilities when we get crowd control by enemies. So really important. We also make it unstoppable for obvious reasons there. And then when we cast Bulwark, I'm also getting 18% base life as Fortify, which is just a nice passive bonus to that ability. From here, we're going to skip the companion skills. We don't need them for this build. We're going to go down to our Wrath skills, where we're using 2. First one we're going to talk about is Hurricane, which is a storm skill. That's why I'm using it. Again, that interaction between storm and earth is really what we want to get here. And this is just some nice passive damage around your body. You don't have to target it. I pretty much click this on cooldown all the time. And it has the nice added bonus of it's going to slow enemies who are damaged by it for 25%. And then also I put some points into some defensive here because we don't have a lot of defensive abilities. This just gives us 20% less damage from enemies as you have that as it's hitting them. So nice little perk there. We're also going to need a couple passives here with Hurricane that I think are important. So I put 1 point into Elemental Exposure, and this is just to get just to get the vulnerable on these enemies through both Hurricane and when we're just generating resources through Storm Strike. So nice one, but I only put the 1 point, and it's really just to get to Endless Tempest unlocked, and we put 3 out of 3 on this. And this increases the duration of that nice passive damage from Hurricane and the slow and crowd control that you get. And then it also gives Cataclysm, which we'll get to in a minute. Our ultimate ability increases both of those by 15%, which is pretty significant. Our second Wrath skill, and probably one of the most fun skills that I've had in the game thus far, is Boulder. And this is an Earth skill, so again, we're playing on that Earth and Storm thing here, where it's gonna basically you can go bowling, and you throw the boulder down, reaches its end of its path, it slows. So again, another form of crowd control. Um, if it's overpowered, which we can potentially get a lot of as well, it's going to stun enemies, so more crowd control. And it has a 20% chance to crit if you have any fortify up, which with this build you're gonna have a ton of fortify. You could go the Savage Boulder here instead. I personally like the consistency of 20% over the randomness of Savage Boulder. Take your pick there. And lastly, we are going to take all of the passives here, and these are like critical ones for me because Earth skills are where we're doing the majority of our damage from Boulder and Pulverize. So you know, increasing this is increasing damage to crowd control of enemies here. Your Earth skills, if they crit, give you Fortify. And then if you're fortified over 50%, which again, you'll be a lot of the time, your earth skills deal 12% increased damage. So these all play on each other really, really well. Okay, lastly, we're going to talk about our ultimate. And I know I'm going to get some flack over this for not using Grizzly Rage in this build, but I wanted to try something different. I wanted to stick with the Earth and Storm aspect of this build. So we decided to go with Cataclysm. It's a beautiful, pretty looking ability. I really, really like it. And it gives us more forms of crowd control, which is great in this build. We're going to extend it by 4 seconds, and we're also going to make it so that enemies are vulnerable, which just helps our overall damage. We're then going to come up here to the nature magic passives, and we're going to put 9 points in here. The only one we're leaving out is Circle of Life. It doesn't do that much healing, and we can benefit more from Fortify in some other areas. So we're putting 3 out of 3 into Defiance for increased damage to elites. We're making our Earth skills deal 12% increased damage to vulnerable, which we're getting through many different sources. And we're also doing 6% increased damage with any nature magic spell, which in this build is literally every spell that we're using. So this is really, really important. And it also triples, bringing it up to 18% increased damage if you're going from an Earth skill to Earth skill to a Storm skill, and vice versa, which we're pretty much doing all the time through Storm Strike and then Pulverize. That's part of our rotation. So you're keeping that uptime of 18% increased damage of all of your skills pretty much all of the time. We're going to round it out here with 9 more points into passives here. First one being Quick Shift, which gives us 15% increased damage every time you're shapeshifting into a shapeshift skill, which is your Pulverize. So 15% bonus to that is really nice. Rounded out here with Defensive Posture, increase the amount of Fortify you gain from all sources by 15%, which we're doing all over the place. And this one here is also really important because, again, we don't have many ways to break crowd control, so this just gives you that extra 19% fortify if you happen to get stunned or immobilized or whatever. So just a nice one to have on top of your Earth and Bulwark and maybe some other aspects that we'll use as we go. And finally, the last point we put here is into our Earth and Might key passive. The reason I'm using this one over Nature's Fury is just for consistency's sake. But basically, damaging enemies with Earth skills has a 5% chance to restore all of your spirit. Not 100. This is 100%. And or get guarantee critical strikes for all of your spells for 5 seconds. All of your Earth spells. And then this is increased by 10% for critical strikes and if the target is stunned or knocked back, which again, we're doing all the time. And then lastly, there is a really nice aspect that also puts this on your storm skills. So basically we have a 10% chance at all times with all spells to proc Earth and Might. So really nice. I like it. It works really, really well with this build. Okay, so we've gone through all of our skill points, our tree for all of our abilities. I do want to take some time now to talk about gear aspects and some key interactions, mainly through the Malignant Hearts. And then we'll finish everything up by going through the Paragon board. More guidelines on the Paragon board than, specific, this is where to put your points. So let's start off with some of the required aspects, in my opinion. Okay, so the first one, very clear, no doubt in my mind. Pulverize is now an Earth skill after casting Pulverize. Tectonic Spikes continue. I'm less concerned about the Tectonic Plates, but Pulverize being an Earth skill. This is a absolute must for this build. Has to be an Earth skill, so don't skip out on this one. Second, pretty much required one for me here is the Earth and Might key passive also applies to your Storm skills. And the reason we're doing this is we have only Earth and Storm skills in this build, and we have 3 and 3. So we're essentially doubling our chance to proc Earth and Might by adding it to our Storm skills. And Earth and Might, remember, this is the chance to crit for 5 seconds straight or restore 100% of your spirit. So both really good things that we want to have as much of a chance to proc as possible. From here, I think there's probably 2 defensive aspects that are a must, just because you're probably going to die a lot without them. First one here is in your codec, becoming injured while crowd control grants you unstoppable for 4 seconds. I need to get a better aspect on mine, but happen to have to use the codec for now. But this one really helps you get out of some sticky situations. If you don't have your bulwark available, you're not fortified enough, whatever it may be, this is a nice one to have, just kind of a your oh shit button. We've also got the duration of Earth Bulwark is increased by 6 seconds. In addition, killing an enemy skill replenishes part of the barrier. So this one's really nice. The interesting part about this is, for me, I've got my Bulwark now down to a 14.35 second cooldown. And it lasts for 9 seconds. So this means I have about 5 seconds of not having Bulwark up, downtime on it. Out of the 14-second cooldown. So it's really, really nice to extend that for that 6 seconds, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of downtime and not many ways to get out of crowd control or defend yourself. This one's super helpful, almost a requirement. Pulverize creates that shockwave. So this is one of the aspects you get for Season 1, so you got to go through that quest line to get it. But it creates a shockwave that travels forward. Again, I need to get a better aspect here. But this gives you some kind of ability to get more distant enemies and AoE with your Pulverize. And I'll show you some clips of that in a little bit. This one here's a nice one. I think this is a nice, really good way to passively heal yourself, because when you're changing into a shapeshift skill, aka Pulverize, you're going to heal for a certain amount of life depending on what aspect you have here. For me, every time I shapeshift, 517 health back, which is really nice. Already talked about the boot one here. Already talked about the Earth and Might key passive. Talked about that. So here I have Earth skills deal 34% more crit to crowd control. Just a nice damage, buff. Not a required one. And you can choose different ones here. I like this one in particular. We're using your core skills deal up to 20% increased damage based on your fortify. Again, I'm using the codec one here. I got to find some better ones going on. But you get the gist here, right? We are always using our core skill, Pulverize. We're ramping up as much as we can in terms of points into it. We do a ton of fortify, so we might as well throw this one on there for that bonus damage as well. Anything core skill is just going to be really good for this. And this one here, again, this plays off the Earth and Storm skills, which I think is really important. Casting a Storm skill grants your Earth skills 40% additional crit, and then same thing going back to a lesser degree, percentage-wise, but your Earth skills will cause your Storm skills to crit. So it's that nice back and forth of the nature magic spells. Okay, so this isn't an aspect, but it is kind of a key interaction with this build, and in my opinion, it's the only option for you to run for Malignant Hearts with this build, and it's a combination of 3 different hearts. So we'll start off with Caged Heart of the Barber, overpowered, everybody knows. So, this is basically saying your enemy's that you're attacking is going to absorb all your crits, explode, deal all of that as an AoE. Well, remember, we're trying to proc Earth and Might, which gives us 5 straight seconds of crits, so this is going to happen quite a bit. So this is a really good one to have. You combine that here with this gem, the orange gem, and I forget what it's called. I'll have to look it up for you. But basically, you gain 74% crit strike damage, but your non-crits deal 38% less. So you're getting that drop off when you don't crit, but when you do crit, you're getting massive, massive crits, and that interacts really, really well here with the Caged Heart of the Barber. And then a nice one to really have, this one here, the pink heart. I forget what it's called again. I can look it up and put it in comments for you. But this one pulls all of the enemies into you. I have it for 49 enemies. So it's really, really fun to pop your barber heart, pop your ultimate ability, pull all of these enemies in, and just watch them explode in madness. It's so satisfying. So just wanted to mention that this is one of those key interactions, and I really think it's the only combination of Malignant Hearts for you here. Okay, so now we're going to get into our Paragon boards, which I think is the what really makes any build shine, for that matter, because all of this stuff is overall bonuses as opposed to something specific to a an ability or a skill or whatever. These is just kind of overall. And it scales as you level up. So this is probably the most important part of it. I'm going to go through some general guidelines here. I don't think it makes sense to really go through and do a point-by-point analysis of how I did this because it's going to be different for everybody based on your gear and your stats and all that. So let's just start with some general pointers here, and then I'll go through the boards that I'm using and the glyphs that I'm using. Okay, first and foremost, resistances are broken, so don't bother putting any points into them. They're not going to work. I should probably listen to my own advice here. I got to go back and do get rid of some points in my Paragon board. But anyway, you get the gist. Don't put anything into resistances if you don't have to. Another general tip, you can rotate the boards as you attach them. So for example, I wanted to get to this legendary node very quickly, so I rotated the board so that this was closest, to my board attachment gate. So that's just kind of a general tip. Don't forget to activate your glyphs, whatever glyphs you are using, to get that additional bonus. So make sure that you're putting. I've got 50 out of 40 willpower, within this red range. I think that's probably it for general tips. Other than I guess maybe on these rare nodes, you typically see around them there's more percentage damages, and these are I always take these because again it's a percentage of the overall stat, and as you level up that's going to scale, right? So I typically tend to take all of these percentages around the rare nodes. The specific boards that I used. The first one was this Earth and Devastation legendary node. Earth skills deal 30% increased damage to enemies afflicted by crowd control. So as you know, at this point, we're doing a ton of crowd control through stun, immobilize, all that stuff. And our pulverize is an Earth skill along with Boulder. So really good one to take here. Really ramps up your damage pretty well. Make sure you're going again to these rare nodes that are doing big percentages, especially you can see here Earth skill damage, crits with Earth skill. So these are really good rare nodes to have. And you could potentially, like I said, I'm using here this glyph Earth and Sky, which is giving us a bonus to all the magic nodes within range. So this one here, for an example. The second board that I'm using is the Ancestral Guidance. So this is after spending 75 spirit, you deal 30% increased damage for 5 seconds. You burn through that spirit pretty quickly using your pulverize, smash on the ground, all of that stuff. So it happens pretty quickly. You're going to get 30% increased damage for 5 seconds from it. So why the heck not? In terms of boards that I'm working towards, there's a couple different options here. I think Survival Instincts could be a good one to take next for some more survivability. It's probably going to be the next one that I do as I get into some higher tier nightmare stuff. You could also use Inner Beast for some more resource regen. After you shapeshift, your spirit costs, or not regen, but I guess your spirit costs go down. That could be a good board to use here. And Constricting Tendrils could be a nice kind of AoE one to use. I'll let you know. I'll give some updates as I level up more and start to flush this build out a bit more and see where it goes. All right, so that wraps up all the content that I've got for you today. If you have made it this far in the video and you've enjoyed the content, consider leaving a like, maybe even a subscribe. We're going to be doing more Diablo 4 content, some more videos, more build videos, and all sorts of different stuff. So really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. Peace.